Today on Beyond 6 Seconds.
You're telling me I'm talking to over 1,000 people all over the world, and I'm in my pajamas in Israel, and that's when the ball drops. That's when the penny dropped, and I was like, that is it. I'm going all in on this thing. This is huge.
Welcome to Beyond 6 Seconds, the podcast that goes beyond the 6-second first impression to share the extraordinary stories and achievements of everyday people. I'm your host, Carolyn Keel. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Daniel Gefen. Daniel is the CEO of the Gefen Media Group, a podcast production and booking company. He hosts a podcast called Can I Pick Your Brain? And is the author of the best-selling book, The Self Help Addict. Daniel, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me, Carolyn. Woohoo!
Yeah, so excited to have you here today. So, you are a really experienced entrepreneur. You've got your own business, you do podcasting, and you're an author. And as I said in your bio, your main business right now is being CEO and founder of the Gefen Media Group. So could you tell us a little bit more about that part of your business?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. First of all, right now I'm CEO of my 5 children. No, actually 4. My wife went to a wedding in Miami. We live in Israel. Mm-hmm. And she's like, see ya. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And there's 4 kids at home.
Oh, boy.
So right now I'm CEO of 4 kids, not Gefen Media Group for the next few days. Now I've got a babysitter now, put them to sleep. So I'm able to do this. We're actually close to midnight. It's just gone 11 p.m. here in Israel. Yeah, dedication. I'll never pass up an invite to a podcast show because I understand the real value that there is in there. So if it means coming to my office and staying past midnight to do one, then I'm up for it. I'm game, That's great. So,
yeah, you make the time for it. Really appreciate you doing that.
Absolutely. It's an honor to be on here. So what is Gefen Media Group? Essentially, Gefen Media Group is a podcast booking agency. So we help our clients get booked on targeted podcasts. We make sure that they're prepared and ready to get on the shows. And we also find the right shows for them. Because, it's like a dating service. You can't just match up to any podcast because you want to be in front of the right audience. And so we make sure that it's a right fit and we book them on those shows. And that's what I've been doing for the last 2 years. I love it. It's a lot of fun. I get to work with incredible people. And the best part about it is that, our clients are becoming the number one authorities in their space. Because, people see them on all these podcasts, they hear them on all these shows, and they're like, wow, you must be like the expert. And that's exactly what happens is essentially you are perceived as an expert in your space because you're being seen on all these different podcasts. So it's a lot of fun, very exciting, and I'm glad to be doing it.
That's awesome. And how long did you say you've been doing that for?
So it's been 2 years. I started the company 2 years ago. I started podcasting 4 years ago. I had no idea what a podcast was. And out of the blue, I get a phone call from a podcaster. And he says to me, hey, Daniel, do you want to be a guest on my show? I heard you've got a great story to share. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh, that sounds really cool. I didn't even know. I said, what's a podcast? He's like, well, it's basically, he described it as, just like what YouTube is to TV. So podcasting is to radio, right? You can tune in whenever you want. You can listen to any topic. You could pause, you can subscribe. It's amazing. And I thought, wow, that's awesome. And I remember my first appearance and I went on the show and I started talking. The next thing I know, he starts wrapping up the show. And I said, wow, that was quick. He says, yeah, that was an hour. And I'm like, no way. That was like 10 minutes. It felt like 10 minutes. I was like, I loved it. It was so much fun. And he's like, no, that was an hour. I said, wow. So how many people were listening? And, I'm expecting him to say 30, 40 people, because the most people I've ever spoke in front of was probably like a classroom of 20 or 30 people,
sure.
In school, right? Mm-hmm. And he says, roughly over 1,000. And I almost fall off my chair. I'm like, what? You're telling me I just spoke to over 1,000 people? He's like, yep. I'm like, I'm in my pajamas in my bedroom. And you're telling me I was speaking to 1,000 people. He's like, yeah. I was like, where are they? Like, where are these people? Because I'm just staring at a wall, right, in front of a microphone.
Sure.
And he starts listing off countries, America, Canada, Australia, Japan, China, England, France, Belgium. I'm like, what?
Wow.
You're kidding me. He's like, no, I could show you. I could show you this, my statistics. I show you where they are. And I'm like, you're telling me I'm talking to over 1,000 people all over the world, and I'm in my pajamas in Israel, which is like a tiny, tiny country on the map. And that's when the ball drops. That's when the penny dropped. And I was like, that is it. I'm going all in on this thing. This is huge, right? Because you have people, Carolyn, who will travel, right? So they'll make arrangements, book a flight, check in at the airport, luggage, sit on a plane, get to the other side of wherever they're going, check into a hotel, take out 3 days of their calendar week, right? To get on a stage with 300 people, 500 people. I mean, that's a good turnout, right? 300, 500. You're good. If you're getting in front of 300, 500 people on a stage, that's a good show. That's a good turnout, right?
Yep.
Here, you're going on a podcast and you're getting in front of, 1,000 people, 2,000, 10,000. I've been on a show where they had, 20, 30,000, 50,000 listeners. I haven't left my country. I haven't left my house. I can go to my office. It's 10 minutes away. Nothing. And to be able to be in front of that many people all over the world, that's incredible. That's so powerful. And so that was the start of my journey.
Yeah, I mean, the reach of podcasting is amazing. And I think podcasting has actually been around for a while, I think 10 years at least, which, I mean, I didn't even realize because it kind of started a little quietly. And I really feel like even in the last year or two, the podcast as a platform has really just exploded, and where more and more people have heard about what a podcast is. A lot of people are really making names for themselves and building their brands using podcasts. And as you said, it's a really great way to establish yourself as an expert and reach people that you would never be able to physically reach in a short amount of time with your message.
Yeah, I think podcasts failed at first. It was like it came out and then it flopped and nobody kind of took it up. Like no one cared about it. And then it had this rebirth a couple of years ago and it just took off. I mean, it literally just, there's about 70 million Americans like listening to podcasts every month right now.
And there's just still so much room for growth from that because there's so much untapped marketplace. There's, I think, despite that number, most people still do not listen to podcasts, which is just an incredible opportunity for the medium to keep growing.
Yeah. And what's incredible is that you just don't know who is listening. And that to me is just, you just don't know who you can impact. I'll give you an example. I'll give you a story that really moved me and it touched me in such a deep way. I remember I did a podcast show and a couple of days later, I get an email, complete random stranger who reaches out to me and says, Daniel, I just want to let you know, I stumbled upon your episode and I have been contemplating taking my life. I've gone through a lot of major depression. And after I heard your episode, I've decided that I want to turn my life around. And I'm determined to get out there and to inspire others.
Wow.
And this person is now a best-selling author. He is a host of a podcast, and he is an extreme athlete. In fact, he's one of, I think only 100 people have ever done a marathon up Mount Everest.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, ridiculous. We're talking about a complete transformation. Complete transformation. And you know what? I had tears rolling down my face looking at this email because there's no way I would have been able to interact with this person if it wasn't for that, like the fact that he just found the episode online. This guy's somewhere in America. I'm in Israel. I mean, it's just the impact that you can have on people's lives from the comfort of your own home, from the comfort of where you live, just with a simple microphone or a headset and a laptop. It's just incredible.
Yeah. And I think I've read somewhere that podcasting is really an intimate type of medium. So even though we're here sitting in front of microphones, but as our audience listens to us, it feels like you're talking directly to your listener. And I feel like that's really transformative in a way that maybe someone sitting in a crowd of 300 listening to a speaker probably wouldn't have that same experience.
Yeah, I think there's something psychological about having someone speaking into your earbuds, like, because you're plugging them in, right? And you've got these voices in your head. And for my show, for example, I have people who avidly listen to every single episode I put out. In fact, you have some crazy fans. Like one guy, I remember a couple of months ago, I get an email from a guy who says to me, Daniel, I stumbled upon one of your episodes and I had this road trip that I'm going on cross country. And so I got hooked and I went back and listened to your podcasts back to back. I mean, I think he listened to about 10 hours straight of my podcast. I was like, oh my God, this guy's insane. But it's addictive. It's like binging on Netflix.
Sure.
You binge, especially if you're driving for that long and you can't watch a movie. You can't. That's the thing about the reason why I believe podcasts have completely taken off is because we're living in a generation where we're always on the go. Mm-hmm. We're very rarely just sitting still. And so the only thing you can really do, or the only type of content that you can consume when you're on the go is audio. You can't read an article, you can't watch a video, right. But you can plug in your headphones and suddenly, boom, you're listening to educational podcasts. Mm-hmm. That's why I think it's blown up like the way it has.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for me personally, I spend at least 2 hours in the car every weekday driving back and forth to work. So that is my podcast listening time. And it's great to be able to curate and pick content for yourself, whatever you want to listen to, whether it's education, whether it's something funny or inspirational. And really, there's just so much to choose from.
Yeah. And especially people who want to develop themselves. You've got a choice. You can either just listen to music. And sometimes, it's important. I listen to music when I want to be really creative, when I want to write very creative, emotional art. I need to listen to some good music. But when I'm on downtime or dead time, they call it, when you're going for a run or I want to be able to learn and to grow. I've got 4 things that I'm actually going to, do this year, because major transformation requires major action. And one of the 4 things that I'm going to be doing this year is I'm substituting books for Netflix. Which is really difficult because, I got hooked on Breaking Bad, which was really bad because that's like 5 seasons. And so every day I'm like binge, like 2-3 hours a night. So I come home from work and I'm just like, I've got to watch the next episode, right? Mm-hmm. And so I've just kind of finished. I was late to the party. I just finished watching Breaking Bad and I've made a decision to myself, okay, that's it. This year, no Netflix, I'm substituting it for books. So that way, instead of just sitting and passing out in front of a show, I'm going to be gaining knowledge. The average CEO reads about 60 books a year. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, that's great. And I know I do audiobooks a lot. It's not quite the same as reading a book on, whether it's an ebook or just holding a physical book in your hands. But it definitely allows me to do more reading. And I feel like, kind of use my time a little bit better to learn something. So, yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah. So it's amazing how you've been able to use podcasting to not only spread your message, but inspire people. And as you said, you never know who's listening. And now you have this great avenue to be able to help other people. And on top of the podcasting, I think at the beginning of 2018, you actually wrote a book around self-help called The Self Help Addict. And self-help is a really big term these days, very popular, gets a lot of press and attention. And I'm so curious to learn about your journey as it relates to self-help. So can you tell me a little bit about that? And even maybe start by, what does that mean to be a self-help addict?
Okay. So self-help, the reason why I wrote the book was essentially I wrote it for me. I was the self-help addict. In fact, I remember about 10 years ago, I was sitting in a therapy session. And the therapist said, what's one thing that you would like to achieve? And I said, I'd love to write a book. I'd love to publish a book. And she's like, oh, that's wonderful. I said, yeah, I even actually know the title of the book and I know what it's going to be about. She says, really, what is it? I said, it's called The Self Help Addict. She's like, oh, I love that title. She's like, so why don't you write it? I said, because I am the self-help addict. Right? That's the whole problem. Mm-hmm. Right? How can I write the book if I'm, addicted? So essentially what it is it's the cycle. It's a vicious cycle. Like any addiction, you get hooked and then you get caught in this cycle where you just feel helpless. You can't seem to break out of it. And it usually just starts with, I'm just going to read a book. Okay. I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. So my wife and I would be outside Barnes and Nobles. This is going back quite a while before all the bookstores were shutting down. Mm-hmm. And we were in LA and we were outside Barnes and Nobles. And I start going in and she's like, she grabs me by the sleeve. She's like, no way you going in there. I was like, what? Why not? She's like, I know what you're going to do. You're going to go in there and you're going to be lost for like 3 hours. Okay. I know how it works. Every time you go in a bookstore, you just disappear. So I'm like, oh, honey, come on, just for an hour. Take the kids out for ice cream, buy something nice. And then she's like, rolls her eyes. She's like, all right, fine, but only an hour, right? She goes off. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, I walk in and I'm like in this trance mode where I just go straight to the self-help section. Mm-hmm. And I'm like looking at all the books like they're diamonds. Like there's like so much potential here. And I know that somewhere among these books, there's this one book that's going to change my life. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's like that hope that this is it, right? And so I start like piling the books on top of each other and I start like going through them and I look at the testimonials and I look at the contents and I flip through and I'm just looking for the right one, the one that kind of just jumps out at me. And then finally I find it, that one that just goes, yes, this is the one, right? Mm-hmm. And I take it to the checkout and I pay for it and then I take it over to the corner somewhere and I open it up. And of course, I've got my yellow marker pen, which all self-help addicts have. We all have this marker pen, right, that we take everywhere with us because, it's our secret weapon, right? So open up the book. And of course, I start marker penning the whole book, like the whole book. You look at all of my books, like you look at all of my self-help books, they're all covered in yellow, right? What the heck is the point of having a yellow marker pen if you're going to make the whole damn thing yellow? That makes no sense, right? The whole point is it's supposed to stand out, but the whole book. And the reason why is because every sentence is like, oh my God, yes, that's a game changer. Oh my God, that's an incredible, wow, look at that, it's going to change my life. And you go through the book. And then what happens is you get to the end. And again, for self-help addicts, when you get to the end, there's this feeling of emptiness. Oh. Yeah, because once you're finished with the book, then now you've got no excuses. Mm-hmm. See, the book essentially becomes a crutch. It's a drug and it's an escape. And it's an excuse. As long as I'm reading this book, I don't need to do anything. You know why? Because I'm reading the book, right? I'm in planning mode. Like, how many of you listening to this are so busy planning that you don't end up doing anything, right? Do you know how many times I've watched an inspiring video and then I sat like literally writing up every single like plan and what I'm going to do and I plan it all out. And then by the end of it, it's just like nothing happens. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so what happens at the end of the book is we feel like we're at the end of the rope. And so we need to grab hold of more rope. We need more excuses. I need to justify why I'm not taking action. Because taking action is very scary. Mm-hmm. It means I have to put myself out there. It means I might fail, right? And so I go to the website, right? Check out the website. And then, of course, they've got a free webinar. And I'm like, oh, the webinar. Okay, that's going to change my life, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, now, the author's got a webinar. And then I get hooked onto the webinar. And then, of course, at the end of the webinar, they've got this seminar and you just got to fly to Vegas and for $3,000, you're going to be with all these other people who are all self-help addicts and we're all going to jump up and down and write our goals and our dreams for our life. And then, of course, you're going to be like, wow, this is amazing. And, of course, the guru standing up on stage is like God and we all just bowed to them. It's just like, wow, my God, I wish I was you. And then we go home and, of course, wake up and we're like, oh, no. And we find another guru. That's just a cycle. It's a cycle. It's a vicious cycle. And, thankfully, I managed to break free from it.
Yeah. As you're speaking, I'm reflecting a bit on, my own journeys. And, I'm a student of psychology. I actually have studied that in my college and my graduate studies. So I've always had an interest in personal development. And, I admit that probably I have over my lifetime consumed way more webinars, videos, motivational books than I've actually taken action on. Because you said action, it shifts the responsibility and it is scary. Absolutely. And the times that I have taken action are the ones that really pay off. Like for me, for starting this podcast, I literally just had the idea and just decided to move really quickly with it. Just get the equipment and learn this and learn that and not talk about it a lot because I was so afraid that I would like talk myself out of it that I'm like, hurry up, let's get this stuff, let's try it. And it's worked out. It's been a year and I'm still doing it. So it was really just that taking action, but it's hard. And I think there's just so much information out there that you get consumed within it and it's overwhelming. And not enough at the same time. It was kind of odd to say, but
yeah, the thing is, it used to be, there's a saying, knowledge is power, but it doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah.
It used to be that knowledge is power. And the reason why is because back in the day, knowledge was not in abundance, right? You had to be privileged to have access to knowledge. But today, my 10-year-old son can go on YouTube and learn how to build a space rocket. Like, seriously, you build a spaceship. He can learn how to do that. It's actually funny. My 8-year-old on Friday, he wanted to make chocolate chip cookies. And so he literally took my phone. Hi, Google, how can I make chocolate chip cookies? Take 2 cups of flour, and he starts following instructions. Like, I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
Heat the oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. It's like, he's following the instructions. Obviously, I took the cookies out of the oven, don't worry. But the point is, it's like, information is at our fingertips, an abundance. There's so much information that we just get overloaded by it. We get paralyzed by all the information. I mean, how many times, and this has happened to me so many times in the past, how many times do you find yourself searching for something online and you watch a YouTube video on the subject, on the topic, whatever it is, and then suddenly they tell you, oh, if you want to find out more about, check this video that I did as well. And then you check that video, and then you see on the side, there's another video that's similar to that. And you're like, well, maybe this one's better. 3 hours later, you still haven't done anything. You just watched so much video that you just don't know what to do because there's so many options. There's too many options, too much. It used to be that knowledge is power, but it's not anymore because it's too accessible. It's too much of it.
Yeah.
You have to do something with it.
Wow. So then you wrote The Self Help Addict because you were the self-help addict.
Yeah.
At what point did you realize that you were a self-help addict?
When I decided I wanted to write the book 10 years ago, I knew that I was a self-help addict. That's why I wanted to write it. But it took me 10 years to actually write it and publish it. It took me 10 years of really evolving and wrestling and ups and downs. And I started so many times. I remember I would go to a park and I'd be like, okay, that's it. Okay, I'm taking the day off, going to a nice park, and I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write it, and that's it. And of course, I go to the park, I write a chapter, I'd get really excited. And then for 3 months, I wouldn't even it'd be done.
Yeah.
That's just how it went. And then about a year ago, well, literally almost exactly a year ago, I finally published the book.
So it really was a long process because, of course, writing a book is taking action. That's one of the main things that you're grappling with since, you were the self-help addict.
Yeah, well, here's the funny thing. It took me 10 years to procrastinate, and it took me actually a year to write it. That's that's the annoying thing. It didn't take me 10 years to write the book. It took me a year. It took me 1 year to write the book, but I was procrastinating for 9, That's the issue.
Yeah.
I was revving up the engine, revving, and then finally put it into gear, boom, there you go.
Yeah. So what was different about that 1 year when you finally stopped procrastinating and finished the book?
Okay, so I figured out something, and that was, we're always motivated. Here's the thing. People say, I'm not motivated. That's nonsense. Everybody is motivated. The question is, what are you motivated by? Some people are motivated by fear. Some people are motivated by success. We're all motivated. I'm motivated to stay in my bed. That's a motivation, right? Alarm clock goes off, and I don't want to get out of bed, and I roll over, switch it off, right? You're motivated to sleep. We're all motivated. So I realized, what is it about us? Why don't we take action? And so the answer is because we are motivated by the fear. There's a discomfort. If I write it, what if people don't like it? And could I really, who am I to write a book? All of these doubts, all these questions. And that's when I realized, what if I created a situation where I was more uncomfortable not writing the book than writing the book? Because if my motivation was comfort or discomfort, right? If that's what my motivation was, then if I make myself more uncomfortable, if I don't write it, then I'll be motivated by that, right?
Right.
I used my own motivation, not really against me. I used it for me, like a weapon. I took it and used it as a weapon. It was being used as a weapon against me, and I yielded the same exact weapon to work for me. That's all I did. So how did I do that? How did I make myself get into a situation where I would be more uncomfortable not publishing the book? So 2 years ago, I was tucking my son into bed, my oldest son. He was 9 years old. And as I'm putting him to bed, the idea occurred to me. I said to him, his name's Alicia. I said, Alicia, I have a special surprise for your 10th birthday. And he got so excited. He's like jumping out of his bed. He's like, what is it, an iPad? He's like, always wanted an iPad. And we don't allow the iPad in the house. So I said to him, no, not an iPad. I'm going to give you a book. And his face drops. And he's like, a book? Well, I don't want a book. And I said, no, it's not just any book. I'm actually going to write the book. And I'm going to write it for you. And you're going to get the very first copy on your 10th birthday. Now, he sprung up and he was more excited by that than the iPad. He gave me such a hug. And I remember in that moment, as he held me tight, I said to myself, oh my God, that's it. Yeah. I can't get out of this now, right? That's it. My son, I can't let him down. And I knew that was it. It's going to happen. And lo and behold, his birthday is the 16th of January. And on the 16th of January, 2018, my book was published and my son, Alicia, got the first copy. Aww. It was such a beautiful moment. We have to find that thing that's going to motivate us more than what's motivating us now. That's it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's really powerful. Yeah, what you're saying really resonates with me because I feel like a lot of the times when I need to make a big change, I, have to get help externally. But a lot of times the external help is sort of setting up an external motivation. So let's say I want to get in shape. I'll work with a fitness coach. Well, the motivation for me just not wanting to go to the gym by myself is the fact that I know that my coach is coming at this date, at this time, and they're going to be waiting for me. So I don't want to disappoint them and I don't want to so I better go show up. And that happens to work for me. But it's that same concept of creating a situation that's more uncomfortable than not doing what you want to do, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually had a guy on my show. He said, yeah, I've always wanted to write a book. And I was like, okay, that's it. I'm going to put this guy to the challenge, right? He wants to write a book. I'm like, oh, really? You really want to write a book? He's like, yeah. I'm like, okay, well, then you're going to write one. He's like, yeah, I'm always trying. No. Here's the deal, okay? Give me a date when you're going to write the book. And so he gave me a date. I think it was December 15th, whatever it was. And I said, okay, you are going to publish the book on December 15th. He's like, really? I said, yes. And here's how it's going to work. I said, if you don't publish the book, this is what you're going to do. I said, give me an organization that absolutely that you are so against, just it boils your blood. He mentioned the name of an organization. And I said, all right, you're going to give $1,000 charity donation to that organization if you do not publish the book on the 15th of December. And my whole audience is going to keep you accountable because if they don't see that book published, we're going to make sure that we're going to be on top of you. So what's your email address? I got to tell everyone the email address. I said, right. So if the book is not out, we're all going to remind you that you need to pay it out. And he just you could feel his pain. Oh God, no. Oh my God, I can't do it. I'm like, I know you can't. That's why you're going to publish the book. A couple of months later, I think it was maybe 6 months later, I get a message from him on the 15th of December. It's a picture of his book. And underneath he goes, I hate you so much. But he did it. Yeah. Right? He did it. It's yeah, you can do anything if you're motivated enough to do it. Find that motivation. You'll do it.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. Wow. So then your book, The Self Help Addict, does that detail your struggles as well as some of these techniques for getting out of that addiction? So what else is covered there?
So it goes through my whole story. Essentially, it goes through my whole upbringing, my whole, tricking my wife into marrying me, my first business that I built and had a nervous breakdown and, my head receptionist wanting to commit suicide. The whole, it goes through my whole sort of story and also then goes through a few of the stories of the people I've interviewed and, how they became hugely successful. My podcast show kind of just took off because, again, I just kept at it. I just kept going, kept doing it. At first, I didn't know what I was doing. Nobody was listening, and again, there's that fear, right? No one's going to listen. Well, the truth is they probably won't at first. There's a good chance that, the first couple of episodes you produce, your mother will listen to it and that's it. Maybe, my wife, of course, would listen to it, but that's it, right? And then suddenly, a few more people and then people talk about it and then the quality of guests that I get, start to increase. And the next thing I know, I'm interviewing billionaires, I'm interviewing athletes, I'm interviewing celebrities, I interviewed the smartest man alive. I mean, it's just like insane what's going on. And then I started getting my download numbers up, and I hit 250,000 downloads. It's just like, what? How is that even possible? What? How? Right? But it's just consistent. You just keep going. You just keep doing it, and you ignore the thoughts in your head that tell you, why are you doing this? Stop doing it. Like, this is a waste of time. You just ignore it. You just keep doing it, keep putting out. And then you look back and you're just like, holy hell, how did that happen?
Wow. Yeah. And I know as a podcast host and producer myself, it's hard not to get wrapped up in numbers and downloads and are people listening, because we're so used to measuring things with a metric like, oh, how do I know if I'm successful? Well, I need to have at least 10,000 people download this and that. And then as you said, when you're starting out, most of us, unless you've already got like an incredible celebrity reputation that follows you to the podcast, like probably for the first few episodes, people aren't going to listen. And I think a lot of podcasters kind of give up because it's a lot of work and you kind of have to put in a lot at the front end. And I see people get discouraged. But, if you can just stay with it, stay consistent, as you said, it's really amazing all the different places you can go. And all these things will happen that you never could have dreamed of, like the people you get to talk to, everything like that.
Yeah. The amount of doors that just open up, it's incredible. Absolutely incredible.
Wow. So how long were you podcasting before you started to see changes, whether you were getting more well-known guests or more feedback or more downloads from listeners? What was that process like for you?
Oh, wow. Well, it's been 4 years now. So I have to go back 4 years ago. But I would say I started getting traction after 6 months. After 6 months of every single week producing an episode. I also did things that were different. I wanted to stand out. So I started rapping. I did a rap intro for my guests. So I noticed that all the introductions that people gave on their shows were really boring. It was like the same introduction, right? Mary Jane is a best-selling author and CEO. Like, it was just like the same thing, and everyone was doing it. So I thought, okay, I could switch up. I could do something different. And so I would basically create a short rap that would introduce the guest. Now, what they did was two things. Number one is, of course, the listeners loved it because they're just like, oh my God, I can't believe there's this white Jewish boy from England rapping. That shouldn't happen, but he's doing it, right? And it's completely out of my comfort zone. Completely. I mean, what the heck am I doing, right? And the reaction from the guests, oh my God, it was just so worth it. Because these people, I mean, a lot of the guests that I had been around the block. Like, they've been on, some of them 50, 100, 200 podcasts, right? And so usually when they come on, they're just expecting the same intro. They're almost like kind of zoning out, waiting for the intro to be over so they can come on. And suddenly they hear me rapping and they're just like, what the freak was that? That was incredible. What was that? I literally had reactions like that. That was like one woman I had on my show. She was like, oh my God, I almost fell off my chair. That was amazing. I was like, wow. And it set the tone as well for the show, So you have to also kind of try to do something different, just try to be a little bit unique. It's not that hard because here's the thing. Most people are really lazy and most people just do what everyone else does. And so if you're just a little bit different, you're already separated from the pack, Yeah, definitely. So, and you can always try different things, as you said. So you can try rapping, or if you get a different idea one day, you can try that. And that's the beauty of having your own show and putting out so much content, is that you're in control of the content. Well, I started seeing life as an experiment. And that also was a big game changer, is when you look at life as an experiment, it's not scary anymore. What happens when you experiment? You're trying it out. So if it fails, it's like, that's fine. It's an experiment, right? Yep. The problem is people take it so seriously that, oh my God, if it failed. Yeah, but when it's an experiment, it's okay. It's supposed to fail. Like, the whole purpose of an experiment is that it's going to fail X amount of times. And when it doesn't, then it's going to be a success. And that's what an experiment is, right? Yep. You look at kids, right? Look at my 2-year-old not so long ago was learning how to walk, right? And it was an experiment for him. He was like curious, and this is interesting. This is intriguing. I want to do this. And suddenly he's wobbling, and then bam, he like hits the table and he starts crying. And of course you're like, oh man, he gets back up and he's just, trying it again, and then hits his head again and boom. And then he gets back up again. If we didn't experiment when we were children, we'd all be crawling on the floor still, right? Think about that. Yeah. We'd all be still crawling. I'd be crawling down the aisle to my wife, like, if I didn't experiment. So we all experimented. We all did it. And we all took risks, and we all were not afraid of failure. That's just how it is. I mean, imagine a child who's embarrassed because if he says something weird, we're going to laugh at him or her, right? They would never learn to speak. And so at some point in our lives, we changed. We stopped taking those risks. It became more important to stay safe and to not be ridiculed than to grow. That's a very sad, sad thing. If you think about that, it's devastating. But something happened. Something switched at some point. We turned from just being this adventurer, just experimenting and not caring what anybody thought. We just did the thing, whatever it was, because we were determined to get that. We were so determined to get the result. We didn't give a damn what anyone thought about us. And we achieved it all. And then at some point, we stopped because we were too afraid of what people thought. And that got in the way. And that's very sad.
Yeah. And I think I had read somewhere that, when we talk about things that keep us from taking action and trying new things, a lot of people say, oh, well, it's fear, fear of this. But I think it's really deeper than fear. A lot of times it's fear specifically of judgment from other people. So most of us don't have that growing up as children. And then somehow life happens or whatever happens and we develop that and it makes it much harder. But if we could all think more like we did when we were children and we were experimenting, we were being creative and we weren't concerned about would everybody like this or would anybody, look at this particular drawing or whatever we're doing, that I think we would be able to accomplish a lot more.
Yeah. And also the thing is that when you start taking action and you start to achieve, then you grow your confidence, you grow your self-esteem. And so that then it becomes like a momentum, it becomes a cycle. So just like there's a cycle of addiction, a cycle of the self-help addict, where it's just constantly falling into the same pit and constantly escaping. Once you break out of it, you change the cycle. It's still a cycle, but this time the cycle reinforces. It's always a reinforcement. There's a cycle with a reinforcement and the cycle gets deeper and deeper and deeper and stronger. And so when you're achieving, there's a reinforcement of confidence. I can do this now. I've done this. I've now interviewed 150 high-profile guests. I've been on 60 podcasts. I'm comfortable with this. I can do this. It reinforces and reinforces and reinforces, and you just keep achieving more and more and more. And my goal is to help people essentially get to the point where rather than looking at someone like a Tony Robbins as an example and just looking up at them like they're untouchable, like, how can I ever, oh my goodness, I want to be able to help people to just realize that there's no reason, absolutely no reason why you can't be the one standing on the stage and Tony Robbins is the one sitting in the audience being inspired by you. No reason. Absolutely none. The only difference between you and Tony Robbins is that Tony sold the ticket, you bought it. That's it. Everyone can be a master at what they're doing, at whatever it is that you are involved in. There's no reason why you can't be the master in that, where you become the go-to person. And that is honestly, I love that. The fact that I can take someone and help them become the go-to person in their industry, where people look up to them and say, wow, I'm the most expensive podcast booking agency in the world. Okay. And the reason why I'm able to do that is because I've created this perceived expertise. People get on a call with me and, they see me as the authority in the space because I've built that reputation. It took time, but I built that reputation. And when you build that reputation, a number of things change. You're no longer chasing business. Okay? People are knocking on your door to work with you. You can choose who you decide to work with and who you don't want to work with, because trust me, I've had plenty of times when I've worked with people and I just didn't want to work with them. They were difficult. They just drove me insane. I couldn't sleep at night. I was pulling my hair out. I was stressing out. And I wanted to get rid of those clients, but I couldn't because I had no choice, right? They say beggars can't be choosers, right? You don't have a choice. But when you're able to turn people down, I remember the first time I got on a call with a potential client and they wanted to pay me. They had the money, they were willing to pay, but I knew this was going to be a difficult client. I'm not going to enjoy working with this person. And I said, do you know what? I don't think it's going to be a good fit. I'm sorry.
Wow. And
I got off that phone and I did a dance because that was to me transformation.
Yep.
That was a game changer for me. That was like, oh my goodness, I turned down a client. That's freedom. That's freedom. See, the thing is that entrepreneurs, we think that freedom is when we leave our 9-to-5 job and we go and start a business. It's not freedom. You work more hours. You're not working for yourself. You're working for your clients.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of the time, you're working for clients that you absolutely hate. Mm-hmm. You hate working with them. They're not working for you. You're working for them overtime. Mm-hmm. You're sitting on the beach, yeah, and your wife and kids or your husband and kids are like, they come, and you're just like, I can't, I got to work. You're a slave. You're a slave to the business. You're a slave to your clients. That's not freedom. True freedom is when you get to choose who you work with, when you work, and where you want to work. That's true freedom. So in my definition, that's true freedom. And to get to that point, you've got to position yourself as the authority. Because when you do, then you can start to choose who you work with, and you can charge what you decide. You get to set the rates, not the market. I get people saying, oh, but, there's this other agency, they charge. Okay, that's fine. Mm-hmm. But when someone knows that I'm the authority in the space, they don't ask that question because they don't want to work with someone else. They want to work with me. What would life be like if you can do that? That's incredible.
Yeah, really powerful. And is part of establishing yourself as an authority in the space is that, well, I know a lot of that happens through your podcasting. Is that the main way that you've done that, or what other ways have you used?
And to me right now, if you would have asked me the question, a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it changes. But right now, the most efficient way is by getting on podcasts. And the reason why is because the reach is incredible and the attention. You can't get their attention anywhere else. Right now, the statistics show that 85% of podcast listeners listen to the whole podcast. Mm-hmm. Okay. The average podcast length is 45 minutes, right? How long have we been speaking for?
I think about 45 minutes.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
So that means that all the people listening to this right now, you've just listened to this for 45 minutes. Do you know how hard it is to get someone to engage with you for 45 minutes? Mm-hmm. In this generation, we've got, I think last time they checked, it was like a 6-second attention span.
Yep.
6 seconds. Think about last time you watched a video for longer than a 90-second video. I mean, it's really hard unless it's really engaging. So to have that type of statistics with podcasts, that 85% of people listen to the whole podcast, that's incredible. And so when you're able to command that type of attention and you're able to get in front of your exact audience, again, because podcasting, it's broken down into categories, right? And subcategories and topics, right? So people who are listening, they are your exact audience. They're the way they've chosen you. You haven't interrupted them, right? Interruption doesn't work nowadays. When was the last time you clicked on a YouTube ad? Think about it, right? If you're anything like me, you stand there hovering over the skip button, waiting for that countdown, right? 5, 4, 3. All right, get out of my face already. Come on, I want to watch the video, right? We don't want to be interrupted. Facebook ads, Instagram ads, we don't want them. We throw them out the way. There's 200 million people who have downloaded the ad blocker on their laptop. 200 million people have an ad block. We hate being interrupted. With podcasts, I was invited. I've been invited on this show by you, Carolyn, and every single person listening to this right now has invited me into their earbuds. You don't get that with anywhere else.
Yeah.
That's the power of podcasting right now. And I'm telling you, if you're not, I'm saying this, I'm biased, but I'm also saying this, even if you never work with me, if you're not getting on podcasts right now, you're a fool. I'm serious, because right now what's happening is, and it's actually free to get on a podcast. Before, obviously you pay the agency to get you booked on, but the podcast hosts, think about that for a second. The podcast hosts right now are not charging for guests to be on a show. That's going to change for sure. Because think about how much it costs to get that kind of attention.
Yep.
You try and take an ad for 2 minutes on a podcast, you're paying good money. But for me to come on this show and speak for an hour, I haven't paid a penny.
Yep.
Right? And the value is tremendous. And here's the thing is that, do you know John Lee Dumas? He has one of the biggest entrepreneur podcasts.
Oh, yes.
It's called Entrepreneur on Fire. And I think he has like 1 million listeners. Anyway, 6 months ago, it was totally free to be a guest on his show. all you had to do is wait in line, right? I mean, I would get my clients booked on that show and they would just wait a couple of months, they'd be on that show. Today, do you know how much it costs to be a guest on that show?
No idea.
It's $4,500 just to get on that show. One show.
Wow.
One show, $4,500. It used to be free. Didn't cost a penny.
Wow.
I'm confident that within a year, that's going to start happening. Especially the quality podcasts, they're going to start charging money for it. So it's going to get expensive. And just like when pay-per-click, how many people here, remember when it cost, 10 cents a click for AdWords? I mean, God, those were the days, right? And how many people regret not going all in? Like, oh my God, I wish I would have just taken advantage of just through now those same clicks could be anywhere from $10 to $100 a click. In some industries, even more than that. It's insane. It got expensive. And these things get expensive quick because when people catch on, it lights up, right? It ignites. And so you've got to jump on the wagon while it's still accessible, while you still can.
Yeah, now is the time, everybody. So
now is the time.
Wow, that's an incredible prediction that within the year. Yeah, I will definitely go back and revisit at the end of this year, 2019, and see if that's happening more frequently. But that's interesting. I've never thought of that, but it makes absolute sense because any other time that you have an opportunity to share your message on such a wide platform, it costs you money usually.
You pay to play.
Yeah. Wow, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
Cool. So, Daniel, thank you so much for being on my show. I love talking about podcasting and self-help addiction and advice with you. What is the best way for people to get in touch with you if they want to learn more about your business or your podcasts?
Well, first of all, I'd like to give away a free guide that I put together for people who are interested in starting to get on podcasts and really find out how to become a great guest. Number one, how to prepare themselves for the shows.
Awesome.
I break it down into, coming up with a great story, a message, a call to action, how to convert listeners into leads and finding the right shows and getting booked on the right shows. And that guide they can get for free if they go to podcastguestsuccess.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Daniel. That's awesome.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will put that information in the show notes so that people can refer to it after listening and get the link directly from there.
For sure. If they want to check out the company, it's Gefen Media Group. It's with one F, gefenmediagroup.com.
Fantastic. As we close out today, is there anything else that you'd like our listeners to know or anything that they can help or support you with?
I think they just should take action on the podcast. If there's one thing that you heard today that just got you excited, one thing that came out from listening to this, don't wait. Don't wait. Because if you wait, what happens is you cool off. And whenever we cool off, we don't take action. We always take action in the heat of the moment. And in fact, do I have a few more minutes? Just a quick story?
Absolutely. Yeah, please.
Okay. My father and I, when we grew up, we didn't have a connection really. My father went through a lot when he was younger. His father was in the Holocaust and he was emotionally scarred. So we didn't have a real relationship. I remember I was watching a movie and it was about a father and son. And throughout the whole movie, they were distant and whatever, they got into a whole thing. And at the end of the movie, they got together, they reunited and they embraced. And I had tears rolling down my face. And I remember in that moment, I had such an urge to call my father up and just tell him how much I love him. And I waited. And, the music dies down and the movie credits come. And then the next thing I know, I'm checking Facebook and it just dissipates. That feeling just goes and you just don't get that push that you need. Fast forward a couple of months, I'm at a seminar, a workshop, and it's a relationship workshop. And it happens to be that the person running the workshop talks about his father. And he gets us to go into this state where we, see ourselves with our father. And there was a whole thing. And I walked out of the seminar and I grabbed my phone and I didn't let myself wait because I knew if I waited, it would just dissipate again. And I picked up the phone, I called up my dad. And I said to him, I know we didn't have a great relationship growing up, and I just want you to know I would never change you for anyone else. And I also want you to know that you would make my world if one day you just called me up and you just told me that you loved me. Wow. And that's it. And, he even turned around to me and he said, I'd love to do that. I just can't. I just don't know how. I don't. Mm-hmm. And I said, I know, but I believe in you. And I put down the phone. 2 days later, I'm playing tennis. It was a Friday afternoon. I remember it so clearly, playing tennis, and my phone rings. So I went to get it and I see it's my dad, and I'm freaking out because my dad only calls me in an emergency. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how it works. My dad calls me if someone died or something serious. So I was like, oh God. And I pick up the phone expecting the worst. And he says, I love you. Oh. And I just stood there, and I can't describe that feeling. And if I would have let that moment go, it wouldn't have happened. Mm-hmm. So don't let that moment go. Take action.
Thank you. Wonderful words to leave all our listeners with. And that's been the whole theme of the show, is just take action, because that's how the magic happens. Yeah.
That's how the magic happens. Thank you so much, Carolyn. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone who's still listening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to Beyond 6 Seconds. Please help us spread the word about this podcast. Share it with a friend. Give us a shout out on your social media, or write a review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite podcast player. You can find all of our episodes on our website, www.beyond6seconds.com. Until next time.